Ken, what's up, man? Great to see you again. It's been a couple of months, I think, since I last came out there.
Yeah, it was great having you in the Nashburg area. It was so fun, and we love what you're doing, man. You're doing such good work for men, man.
Thank
I
you.
got to tell you, I was bragging about you to my wife this morning. It's so needed in today's world.
I appreciate that. I believe so, and it's really cool to see what you guys are doing because I think the message of finances, the message of career pursuit and aspirations. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was out on a walk with my wife and kids, and I was looking at my kids as they were getting older, and I thought to myself, man, especially my oldest, he's turning 14 tomorrow. And I thought I've really got about 4 years left with him before he's out.
That's right.
And I'm fortunate enough that I found a career, and found is not the right word. I'll say built. I've built a career
Yes.
that allows me to be home with my family and be engaged and be passionate about. But in the thousands and thousands of conversations I've had with men, the overwhelming majority of men are not in that position.
That's right. That's right.
And
And here's
so
what
the work
happens.
you're doing is crucial.
Well, thank you. And I'm tell you what happens. The pressure, the cultural pressure on your 14-year-old son is so subtle because it's everywhere
Mm,
that we as parents have got to wake up to this. And the pressure on your 14-year-old, whether he realizes it or not, is to go get a safe degree so he can get a safe job.
hmm
And nothing about that is manly. Nothing about that is, quite frankly, feminine. Nothing about that is true to who we are as humans. We as humans are creatures of progress, creatures of contribution. We long to make a difference in this world, and yet we're told get really good grades, do really good on your achievement test or your standardized test so that you can get a good college degree and hopefully get a good job. Nothing about that has any heart in it. Nothing about that speaks to the uniqueness of your son. And when we talk about men specifically, and this isn't popular to say in this world, but it's true, and there's all kinds of data out there, that men, much more so than women, put a tremendous amount of self worth into their work. Now, that can be unhealthy, but there's nothing wrong with that fact. And that there's a reason why. It's because men are protectors, they are providers, they are warriors, and there is a contribution attached to all those roles. So, you know, I'm so glad your son has got you to guide him to be who he is uniquely created to be. And there's no shame in that. There's value in all work.
One of the concerns I know that I've had in the past, and I know, and I'm trying to speak for my audience, obviously they're not here with me, but I try to speak for them as we have these conversations, is that it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that passion or purpose driven work doesn't immediately pay the bills like going to work for a corporate environment. So if I'm wrong, let me know. But I think that's where a lot of these guys get hung up is they're like, hey, I'd love to be passionate about my work, but I got food to put on the table. I've got a roof I've got to put over my wife and kids' head. So help me walk through that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is the false choice. That's the false choice. Because somewhere along the way, we've been told that it's all about just safety and a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just think about that. Now, let's also just say that no one has to teach a human to fight for survival, right? I mean, I love Bear Grylls and all these shows, and I watch this show alone. I'm obsessed with all this stuff, and I'm not like an outdoorsman, but I am forever intrigued by the ability of a human to survive. And some are better at surviving than others, obviously, right? Okay. But
No
the
doubt.
reality is that Bear Grylls is way better at it than I am. But I can tell you this, he ain't gonna fight any harder than I am. He's just gonna do it better than me. All right. So that's a fact. I'm gonna fight hard, but I'll die faster. It's a fact. But I'm gonna fight to survive. And we don't have to teach anybody that. So in that primal human element is what makes us think and fixate and focus on provision. It's a form of survival. So therein lies the importance of the paycheck. But then culture has made it all about that to where it feels, and this is the point that you're making, a bit silly, a bit whimsical. if I'm going to actually listen to my heart and follow a dream long enough to be able to be paid for it. And you are
Right.
absolutely right. This is a false narrative. It's a false choice. And so, as you know, Ryan, what I teach is how do we make sure that it's not fantastical and whimsical and silly and delusional? How do we do this, man? It's very simple. Self-awareness will reveal whether or not it's silly or it's significant. And I'll explain very briefly. When I get really clear on what I do best, my God-given talent, hard skills or technical skills, and then soft skills, or otherwise known as people skills. And men, I want you to think of these as the power tools, baby. Because when I'm talented, I don't mean average. I mean talented. I'm above average. And when I'm above average or talented, I can practice and hone the talent into a sharpened skill. In other words, I go from a handsaw, which will get the job done, to a power saw, where we're talking about excellence and efficiency. So we start with, what am I really, really good at? Hard skills, soft skills. Then we go to, what do I love to do? And I define this as passion. Now, this is really cool, guys, because the reason I chose the word passion, Ryan, when I was developing this methodology to describe work you love, is because the Latin word for passion is pati, P-A-T-I. And the
Okay.
usage of the word pati, passion, in the Latin, was to describe something you were willing to suffer for, an outcome, a desired future that you were willing to suffer for. So if you're passionate about working out, it's because you see a desired future on the end of those squats.
Hmm.
Okay. Eating right, your marriage, your parenting. If you're willing to read books and go to parenting classes, or if you want to be great at a skill, I love these craftsmen who build things with their hands. They're passionate about building something, creating something. And so they're willing to suffer through it. One of my favorite movie scenes that really brings this to a beautiful picture is The Patriot with Mel Gibson. It's very early in the movie, and he's in his barn, and he's in there trying to make a rocking chair, and he
Right.
gingerly sits in it. You guys know the scene, and he falls over and he gets mad and he throws it. And it's this part of the scene that I love the most. When he throws the rocking chair over, we see another pile of previous failed rocking chairs,
Right.
and
Right.
he's pissed off. But that's passion. See, he cares deeply. He loves the idea of making his own rocking chair. So he's willing to suffer the gnarled fingers or whatever, the willingness to suffer. And so here's the other thing. When I love a craft or I love a type of work, I'm willing to suffer. Watch this. Patience, because patience is suffering. Come on. Patience is hard. It's suffering. It's an emotional suffering. Patience to put in the work, to persist and wait for the opportunity, wait for my time. The willingness to suffer rejection. Is there a more painful thing in the world than being rejected? So you're going after it, guys. You've got a product, you got an idea, and the audience isn't taking it, or somebody shoots you down. Rejection's terrible. We have to suffer through failure, where we actually lose. We have to suffer that. So we chose the word passion to describe work you love. And guys, it's pretty simple. Some of you out there are kind of going, I'm not really sure. Yeah, you are. You have some ideas, because this is what we're looking for. Passion for a type of work, a task or a function or a role, is defined by high emotion and high devotion. When I think about it,
Hmm.
I get excited about it, Ryan. When I'm in the middle of it, I got the juice, man. Time flies. It's just unbelievable how much I love it. And then I want to keep doing it. I can't wait to get back at it. That's devotion. High emotion, high devotion. All right, the final element is mission. We have talent, what I do best, passion, work I love to do, and then mission is results I want to contribute through my work. So early on, when I got into broadcasting, Ryan, I was trying to figure out which way I was going to go, and I got into sports broadcasting because I love sports. I mean, to this day, I can talk sports all day long. I love sports. I played every sport. I love watching sports, and so I got into it, and I realized that it was talent. I had the talent to communicate publicly. It was passion. I enjoy performing, the pressure when the mic's on to deliver something that holds an audience. But I was realizing that I was producing entertainment. The result that I was contributing in sports talk was entertainment. Now, there's nothing wrong with entertainment. Entertainment is good. It's
Right.
needed. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
sure.
However, it didn't give me the juice. And I realized that I wanted to broadcast for influence, for transformation, which is why I'm in the world I'm in now. Okay. That was a big moment in my journey of clarity. So mission is results that matter to me. And by the way, mission speaks to motivation. No one can motivate you. No leader can motivate you, despite what you read in poor leadership books or really bad, cheesy motivational posters. The only person that can motivate you is you. And by the way, you don't just summon motivation. That's all a bunch of hogwash too. If anybody tells you that on Instagram, they're full of crap. They don't know what they're talking about. You don't summon motivation. What you do is you act on passion and mission. I'm motivated to go work out early in the morning, not because I'm going to be penalized. I'm motivated to do it because I want to be healthy. I want to be high energy. Pick whatever your motivation is. Intrinsic motivation is what we're talking about. Extrinsic motivation is what we do to our kids. If you don't clean your room, you don't get to have your buddy over. So they obey for reward, or they obey to avoid penalty. Intrinsic motivation is I do it because I stinking love it. And so that's talent, passion, mission. So wrapping this up, because this is really the core of really understanding who you are and can I make money doing something I love? Well, if we go through those three elements and we're self-aware and we go, okay, does this career path or job allow me to spend 75% of my day, it's a rule of thumb, using what I do best, talent, to do work I love, passion, to produce results that matter to me, mission. That's as tight as it can get. Now that becomes a filter. And so then when the doubters say stuff to you, and sometimes it's the people closest to us because they live in a state of fear, you can come back and go, wait a second, when I'm doubtful, I got to get clear. Is this allowing me to use what I do best, talent, to perform work I love, passion, to produce results that matter to me, mission? When the answer to those three questions is yes, hey, you will win. I don't know how long it's going to take, but you will win because you were created to do that. And if you stay with it, no matter what anybody else says, you will find a way to make a living.
So one of the blessings that I had when I started Order of Man was I had a financial planning practice before this. A lot of guys listening know of that. And so they'll ask me, how did you get started? Well, I would work 2 hours in the morning, then I'd go do my financial planning stuff. And then I'd work 2 hours in the evening after the kids went to bed. And that was my life for about 6 to 8 months before I started doing more of this Order of Man stuff and the financial planning stuff. And then I took this on full time. And so people will say, well, how did you make that transition? I had the benefit of selling my financial planning practice. So I had residual income coming in each and every week based on 8 years of business that I have built up. And then I eventually went on to sell my business for a hefty paycheck that floated the discrepancy between what my family needed and what we're actually pulling in. So what would you recommend to a guy who says, I am passionate about building canoes or painting or teaching people how to build websites or firearms training or whatever it might be, and yet they don't know how to make that transition from their 9 to 5 to the passion or purpose project?
I'm glad you asked that. I've done it, guys, and I write about it in the book, From Paycheck to Purpose. I put 7 stages out there in the book. That's what the book is. Very practical. Get clear, stage 1. We talked about that just a moment ago. Get qualified, stage 2. Get connected while I'm getting qualified for opportunities. That will then allow me to step into stage 4, get started. Stage 5 is get promoted, and that's where my answer is going to be. But I want people to have the context. So I'm going to get promoted. I keep moving up the ladder. And by the way, to answer this question, Ryan, specifically, we promote ourselves, and I'll unpack that. We get promoted. Do we step into the dream job like you did? Everybody's story is different. And now in the dream job, Ryan, there's one more stage. We give ourselves away. We're not working for money. The money's great. It's there, but it's about legacy. We're giving ourselves away. Okay. Back specifically to stage 5 of the 7 stages that we write about in From Paycheck to Purpose. How do you move from day job to dream job? All right. That's the question. And by the way, that's the context. So if I can't sell a company like Ryan did in his story, you got to do what Ken Coleman did, which is I didn't have a windfall. I had to sell sponsorships to live events because I had some background in that in the business world. And I was doing little small stuff here and there. I started a radio show, which I had to pay for, $250 an hour on Saturday, talk radio, where 3 people are listening. My wife, she loved me, and she wanted to say something nice when I got back home. The guy across from me in the booth, and then probably one person that happened to turn the radio on at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon in the South. Okay. So I was doing all these little things here and there, but I had a day job. And I was doing very much what you talked about, Ryan. I was stealing time from myself. I got that day job on the rails where I didn't have to spend 8 hours a day doing it. And I stole some time at night. I stole some time in the morning. If I took time for lunch, I was working on the dream job. So day job and dream job, it is an incremental climb. I wish I could give you some awesome, one of these Instagram influencers, all that cotton candy crap they feed you that, oh, you can fast forward on it. No, you can't. It's rare that a Ryan can sell a company. That's rare and good for you. But most of us are going to have to incrementally climb. And by the way, to your credit, you still incrementally grew the dream.
Yeah, I mean, I had to build up the business to sell in the first place too.
That's
so
the point.
I'm not discounting myself either.
No, you're not. And I just want to make sure the audience, I want you all to hear that everybody's coming at it differently. But here's the deal. So what we do is, I want you to think of it as trying to get the boat as close to the dock as possible. So we're in that boat of day job, and we want to get that boat as close to the dock as possible. This idea of jumping out and swimming is nonsense. It's the stuff of bad motivational posters and movies. The reality is that we want to get as close as possible. So how do we do it? Well, the simplest way to say it, not knowing all the different ventures that we might be thinking about in this audience, is that as I'm taking care of business and my family and providing in the day job, I'm stealing time for myself. I'm going to sleep less, right? Meaning getting up earlier, going to bed later, watching less TV, stealing time on the weekends, making myself an absolute serial connector. And I write an entire book on this. My previous book is called The Proximity Principle. We cover that in stage 3, Get Connected, in this new book. But Ryan, I connected with so many people. I was a human sponge. And I wasn't connecting for them to asking them to do something for me. I was connecting with them to learn, what should I do next? Who should I meet next? And it was a series of years of doing that, which brought me phenomenal opportunities that I could have never manufactured on me. And so this takes time. But if I stay with it, and so I'm getting better, I'm putting every nickel, guys, in the dream side gig. If I'm doing day job and dream job, I'm saving up every nickel. I'm sacrificing like crazy. And there will come a season where the boat gets close enough to the dock to where you step off. And I'm not trying to be metaphorical, but I'm trying to be as practical as possible, guys. I don't know what your timeline is, but I know this. If you stay with it long enough, you will get to a point where Ryan, it was what Ryan did. He built the financial business up. That was a means to an end. That was the day job. And then that allowed him to then make the transition. And so many people get discouraged because what we think is, I've got a fast forward microwave moving up the ladder. And I've never heard anybody say, jump up a ladder. It's always climb the ladder.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure we understand that. Like, I got to get to this rung. And so it is, I'm going to give you something that was really hard for me. I suck at patience. Fast-paced guy, fast thinker, hard worker, visionary dreamer guy, man. I just got a million ideas a day. And when I was in this journey of being 33, running my little live event sponsorship business, which I didn't like anything about it, and I had this big vision for broadcasting, but I had to put my head down. I remember one day, Ryan, I was sitting out on my back patio with coffee, and I was in a particular season of frustration. And I had a thought, and I wrote it down. When I wrote it down, it was for me. And I went, oh, that's good. I think I might want to hold on to that and live that and maybe share it one day. And this is the thought. Don't obsess about the next and miss what you need in the now, because you'll ultimately sacrifice the next. I'm going to say that a little slower because it's really the bumper sticker for what we're talking about in this particular question. Don't obsess so much on the next that you miss what you need in the now, because you'll ultimately sacrifice the next. And men, we're creatures of progress. But if we don't do what we have to do in the now, the very thing that we desire so deeply the next, we will never get it. And it's that mindset of how do I skip a couple steps and how do I fast forward? And it's like, no, who do I need to sit with in the now and have coffee and learn from? Who do I need to help in the now? Who do I need to test with in the now? What do I need to learn about myself in the now? What discipline do I need to get better in the now? And it is when we win the now, Ryan, that the next always appears.
I think that's powerful because to me, from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges a lot of men have is that what we're talking about isn't sexy, especially in a culture of immediate and instant gratification. If I want a hamburger, I run to the convenience store. If I'm a little cold today, I crank up that heater. All I have to do is press a couple buttons on the thermostat just right outside my door. And so I can have instantaneous results. And in my experience, it can be very frustrating to focus on the now, like you're saying, but not actually experience the tangible results today of the effort that you're putting in. So how do you manage those expectations personally, or even calculate improvement and benchmarks so that you'll stay on the path of this purpose journey for yourself?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think you've somewhat answered the question as you asked it. I think it's very important that we look ahead first. So it's very important, because I was talking about the now, but understand that's a discipline. Once we go, this is the mountaintop. So I'm going to climb Mount Everest. All right, that's a decision I've made. All right, now that's where I'm going. So that's the where, that's vision. I know why I'm going there. You got to have a reason for climbing Mount Everest, right? That's purpose. And then we go, okay, now I got to come up with a plan to achieve this. So nobody in their right mind, Ryan, says, all right, hey, sweetheart, I'm booking a flight and it's about 3 weeks from now, we're going to climb Mount Everest. No.
I don't know. There's probably somebody who's done that. They're dead, of course, but there probably is somebody who's done that.
That's right. And they didn't even make it to base camp. They died earlier because they went up there with a knapsack and some Tivas.
That's right.
So what we do is you think about that, you go, this is a monumental achievement. I've got to figure out what's the physical conditioning I'm going to need for this. What's the equipment I'm going to need? How much is it going to cost me for this trip? I mean, there's all these things, and we got to get in a group. We've got to train for that. There's a reason why they go to base camp and hang out for a little while. If you've ever watched those documentaries, it's fascinating. The body's got to acclimate. Nothing about climbing Mount Everest is fast. And so that's the mindset you got to have. Have the mindset of a mountain climber. Those mountain climbers are disciplined, man. They're disciplined physically, they're disciplined mentally, and they're disciplined emotionally, and they're disciplined tactically. So that's your mindset. All right. So now we go, okay. I got to back down from this. What's the first stage of the climb? What am I going to do first? So for me, I'll just kind of try to make this personal for guys, because it took me 7.5 years to get to Ramsey Solutions. And then I paid my dues for 3 more years, Ryan, before I got the dream gig.
Was that a vision of yours? Is when you're talking about Ramsey Solutions, was that on the radar? Did you know that you wanted to work with Dave and the crew, or is that something that just kind of came to fruition as you built and went on the climb?
Yeah, not initially. I remember when I finally made, and I write about this in the book, so I won't unpack it all, but I remember when I finally said, okay, it is broadcasting, and it's not going to be sports broadcast. It's going to be personal growth, and I'm not even sure where this is going to fit, but I just know that's what I'm supposed to do. And I need to go get some basic broadcasting. So I started in sports broadcasting just to get experience on the mic. And I had more of a voice then. I didn't have the methodology that I have now. So anyway, I remember early on telling my wife, I said, babe, I'll never forget it, Ryan. This is a big moment. We were having dinner one night, kids were in bed. And I was emotional, and I was sharing with her how much I appreciated her supporting me, because this seems like an absolute wandering, crazy mission I'm about to go on. And I was just telling her, I said, babe, I got to tell you, I think it's going to take every bit of 5 to 7 years. Do you realize that? I mean, that's a best guess. It's pretty cool. And it took 7.5 years. And I had my own show, and I was on Monday through Friday. So I went from that Saturday show. I was making some progress, but I mean, dude, still local radio. When Dave Ramsey calls and says, do you want to come up here? I was like, yeah. I remember one friend go,
yeah,
did you
big
pray
time
about that? I went, no, I didn't pray about it. And they were like, this is one of my really deeply religious friends. Did you pray about that? I went, no. They're like, what? Why do you pray about it? I went, what is there to pray about? When God kicks a door wide open, I don't need to go, hey, God, are you sure?
Are you sure about this?
I had nothing to do with it. Now, I'll tell you what's interesting, though, because I think it's important for guys to hear this. That's 7.5 years in. Dave calls. And it wasn't the dream gig, by the way. Like I held the mic for a bunch of people. I'd already written a book by the time I got here. I wasn't in any way a big deal, but I had done some things. And then I was supporting other Ramsey personalities that didn't have the experience I had. I got to tell you, folks, it was hard. I had to swallow humble every day. It was great for me. It was great for me, man. It really got me in the right heart position. But anyway, 5 years in, Ryan, I did come up and meet with some of Dave's top executives because I knew them. And I pitched them on the position that they ended up hiring me on 2.5 years later, but they told me no at the time. It was pretty interesting. So I had said no to that and I'd moved on. It was an idea maybe of where I could fit, but I thought the door was closed and it wasn't closed. And so this is a little miniature lesson I'm just going to drop in here because dudes are smart enough to get this. I want you to stop hearing the word no. Now, I don't want you to be delusional because I hate delusion. It drives me nuts. It's an enemy of the devil. I mean, it's a tool of the devil. But instead of hearing no, which seems so final, I want you to hear not here. I want you to hear not yet. So that's not delusion. That is the door is closed. Instead of no, it's not here. See, no is discouraging and disillusioning. It's not no, it's not here, bro. Not now, bro. And when I figured that out, it was a game changer. That's just a little extra thing there because it was a 7.5 year journey for me. And so, anyway, I got off on a tangent there, but that I want people to really understand that we let no discourage us too quickly.
Well, and I think even hitting those no's, like you said, when you translate that to not here, not yet, no puts a period at the end of the sentence.
That's right.
So like, oh, throw up my hands, nothing I can do, but not here, not yet is, okay, that didn't work. Either the idea is bad or the timing's off, or I don't have the skill set yet. And what it does is it creates a comma at the end of that phrase. And so you can go back to the drawing board and think, okay, well, that didn't work. So here's what I need to do. I remember early on, I came out with an event and it was the first event we were going to do. And we were about 3 weeks out from the event and I didn't have a single person sign up for the event.
Oh,
and I could have thrown in the towel, not a single person. I could have thrown in the towel. I could have said, nope, nobody cares. Nobody wants this. Yeah. But I was more of that not yet mentality. So I called the guy up who I put money down on this venue. And I said, we don't have anybody signed up. And he's like, oh man, that's too bad. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I need to cancel the event. He's like, that's a bummer. You're going to lose your deposit. Yeah. And I was like, well, okay, can you work with me? What if I bumped it back 6 months? And he's like, we're trying to get this thing off the ground. We'll work with you. We'll just hold your deposit. It's going to be more in 6 months because that's going to be in season. So it's going to be a little bit more. I said, that's fine. And I went back to the drawing board and we sold out that second attempt at an event. And I haven't had an event in probably 15 events that we've done now that has not sold out. But it was a not yet. I just need to go back to the drawing board and figure out a better way to do it.
See, that's good. I hope the audience gets that. Ryan dropped gold there. See, when we say not here, not yet, instead of making excuses, we make a way. That's what I just learned from you. You didn't make any excuses. You bought a little bit of time. You didn't quit. You didn't go pout. You said, all right, I'm going to figure it out. And see, when we don't allow ourselves to wallow in the no, great things happen. There's just so much to learn from the not here, not yet. So much. And by the way, where in the world did we all, where did our human psyche go to where we always expect a yes, and we kind of forget when we launch on our own, we forget the people that we actually admire, the people that we read about, that they experience no's all the time. I mean, that failure is a part of the deal. It's interesting. I tell people on the show, Ryan, when somebody calls up, I'll get a caller that's really discouraged. And they'll tell me, Ken, I'm just dealing with doubt and fear. And after I coach them through it, I'll go, hey, can I tell you something real quick? Doubt and fear is a great sign. And they always are kind of quiet. Like, I don't understand what you're saying, man. The person who lives on the bleachers of life never experiences fear or doubt. But men and women who move forward experience fear and doubt every day. It's a good sign. It's
Right.
a good
Means you
sign. Now,
care.
yeah, I mean, we got to overcome it. We can't become victim to it. But I would also say, be encouraged by your fear and doubt. It means you're trying to do something or you're doing something.
I think I know where a lot of this hesitancy comes from when it comes to our own fear and doubt is because in today's world, we can jump on Instagram or
Yep.
YouTube or listen to this podcast. And for example, with this podcast or your show, people are jumping in 7, 8, 10 years later and they're seeing the guest and they're seeing the success and they're seeing the downloads. And all I have to do really is post all of my wins. Nobody's going to air out their dirty laundry, even though we all have it.
Oh,
And so all you do is you see everything that's going right for everybody, and you see nothing of what's going wrong in their life, although we are mirrored with failures and setbacks and challenges and obstacles and adversity. And I wish actually more people like you and me and others would share some of the hardship and some of the challenge, because that would paint a more realistic picture of what it takes to move from the 9 to 5 to something that's
yeah.
purpose driven.
Here's one. I'll jump in. I write about it in the book, but early on when I was trying to develop some type of what they call a demo in the broadcasting world, you got to have a demo of clips, you know, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
get hired. So I'm just kind of following the traditional route. And I had a connection. My wife's cousin is Marty Snyder, who's a big time NASCAR reporter, NBC. So you can look Marty up. Marty's great. He's a stud and he's been in the NASCAR world for a long time. So my wife calls Marty up and goes, Ken's trying to do this. Do you know anybody that can help him do some demo highlights in Atlanta? And he lives in Charlotte. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like Turner Studios. TNT is right downtown Atlanta. And that's where, you know, inside the NBA with Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith is. And so they have the NASCAR show there. So he calls his buddy up, Ryan, and he acts almost too quickly. I was like, whoa, Stacy, like I'm in over my skis, but I didn't have any
Yeah.
choice. So before I know it, he calls a guy up who's a host of a 30-minute highlight show on Turner Sports. And he says, hey, will you let Ken come in? He's the husband of my cousin. Will you let him come in and just do a little demo, do a little 3-minute highlight package after one of your shows? And the guy's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Tell him to come down next Thursday. Well, Ryan, it's like one of these deals where I'm like, oh crap.
Right.
And I'm like, I've been watching Sports Center since it was first out. Okay. I mean, I'm a highlight. So I kind of go, all right, wait a second. I got this. I mean, how hard is it? I'm going to sit in front of a camera and I got a script they're going to give me, and I'm just going to comment on the NASCAR races. And I'm like, okay, no problem. So I go in really overconfident. And I get there and I'm on set behind the cameras. I'm watching, they wrap up. And I think that the guy's going to kind of walk me through a few things and tell me some things. I'm so naive. I'm an idiot. And folks, he just comes up to me and goes, hey, man, good to meet you. And I'm like, hey, yeah, thanks for doing this. He goes, all right, man, you ready? And I'm like, and my pride took over. And instead of saying, no, man, I'm really not ready. What are we about to do? I let my pride get the best of me. I walked up behind that desk and I'm looking at a stinking freaking professional crew. These people are done with their show. They want to go home. They don't know who I am. Who's this ass clown, you know, that's in front of us here? And, oh, we're doing a favor for him. Okay, great. And man, I'm going to tell you something. Every drop of moisture in my body went away. It was like I'd been
Oh,
in the
yeah.
Sahara for 6 weeks. I couldn't pull my lips apart. This was before we even started, because what was happening was terror was taking over my body, because all I saw was a prompter. I hadn't run through them other than watching this dude do it just moments ago. They didn't know. And I didn't have the guts to say, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. So man, here's the deal. What am I doing? I didn't ask questions. And so what happened was they rolled the clip and I got behind on that highlight so fast. I couldn't, my mouth, you could have put a rock in my mouth and it would have stuck to the roof of my mouth. I was freaking out. I got behind and it was the worst 3 minutes of my life. And I get done and I look over at this host and he's looking at me like, oh boy.
What just
And
happened?
I look at these guys and I'm so humiliated, Ryan. And I say to him, I go, man, I'm sorry. I've never done this before, but I'm literally going, you know, and my heart rate is just bursting through what I feel like you can see it through my suit. And he goes, all right, no worries, man. Do it again. And it was worse the second time
Oh,
because now
geez.
my brain was focused on everybody else
Of
noticing how bad
course.
I sucked. I share that story to say that those were the early days. And I walked away from that, honestly, Ryan, so discouraged that I had blown my career because I got one legit favor from a legit person who happens to be my wife's cousin. And he's going to hear from this guy about
Oh,
what a
yeah.
total dolt and imposter that I am. I mean, you can just imagine where my brain went. And folks, I was really, really discouraged. But I tell the story because you set me up, because I want you to hear what I learned from that. That was the worst moment of my professional life. And you can't even call it professional because I was clearly a rank amateur. You know what I walked away with on that? I got to a point where I got over myself and I got over my humiliation, and I learned a valuable lesson that day that I took with me the rest of my life. Relentless preparation leads to reflexive performance. And where I screwed up that day is I just was overconfident in my talent. And I went in there honestly cocky, didn't try to be, but in my mind, and I got humiliated. And I learned a lesson. Relentless preparation leads to reflexive performance. And if I'm prepared, even though I'm terribly nervous or terribly inexperienced, I will be able to perform. And I'm not going to half butt it anymore. And I'm never going to do that again. If I ever get another chance on camera and a mic again, I'm going to be prepared. And
Mm.
it taught me a valuable lesson. And so here, sit here all these years later, and I've been able to interview heads of state, presidents, and A-listers. And I'm not going to drop names because I don't want to be that guy, but I have in front of thousands of people live. You know, I've been on network television in front of millions. I co-host the second largest radio show in America. My pulse is like this. But that's because for years and years and years, I've embraced preparation. But it was a stunning, humiliating failure, Ryan, that brought that lesson home. And
No
I mean,
doubt.
so that you got to filter failure, guys. And I don't recommend anybody fail that spectacularly because that's probably not good for the psyche. I think to this day, I have a little tick, you know, where I do that every once in a while because it was so dramatic. But I mean, I got 3 or 4 more of those embarrassing stories like that were so bad.
Yeah. Well, I have those with podcasts, like some of the early podcasts I've done, and I haven't pulled them, but I've been very tempted to pull some of the podcasts where
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, I remember the first conversation I did with Jocko Willink, and I was so nervous about
of
it
course. Right.
because he was somebody I respected, somebody I
Right.
admired. He was my first like real big guest. And I feel like I just completely dropped the ball. And he's kind of a harder interviewer, anyways, because
He
he's
is.
so black and white and matter of
He
fact.
is.
And oh, I just vowed, I'm like, I'm never, and you know what? It drastically improved my podcasting performance.
Of
It
course.
sucked. It even sucks to think about it now, but it improved. So you said something interesting though early on in the conversation. You alluded to the question that a lot of guys have, which is, I don't know what to do. I don't know what my passion is or my purpose is. And you said, yeah, you know. And I tend to lean more towards what you're saying, but there's something that's keeping guys from moving forward. Is it fear? Is it, hey, I don't think I can make money doing that. So they throw in the towel before they ever give themselves an opportunity. Like what in your experience keeps them from moving forward with what they know in their heart they could potentially pursue?
Yeah, I'm glad you circled back to this. I did mention earlier fear, doubt, and pride, but I'm going to give you the specific types of fear and doubt and pride, guys, because I think if you identify this, then you go, okay, now I know what the monster is. Okay.
Mm,
And let me just say this as we break fear and doubt specifically down. Fear and doubt do sometimes protect us, but
right.
many times they hold us back. So as I break these fears and doubts down, guys, I really would recommend you pause the podcast, write this stuff down, and begin to go, okay, let me look at what I think is holding me back. And then I've got to say, is this fear protecting me? Okay, like if my kid gets too close to a bonfire and they back up, fear's protecting them, right? But
Sure.
if the kid won't jump in the pool when daddy's right here going, jump, buddy, fear's holding them back. Okay, so we get that. I
Mm,
want to give that context. Okay, real quick, run through these really fast. The most popular fears out there that I hear on the show. I've talked to over 5,000 callers live. Here are the big fears, and I'm going to list them in what I think are they're the biggest giants. Fear of the unknown is the number one all-time gripping fear. I think it's the greatest fear the world's ever known. It's the fear of the unknown. Think about it. Last time you drove into some dense fog, or a heavy downpour that you couldn't see past the hood of your car. That's a scary deal. We're pulling over. We're not pressing on through that. We're
Unless you're
pulling
my
over.
wife. My wife would press through a hurricane. She's done it, actually. I'm like, hon, maybe you ought to slow down. She's like, no, I'm good. I can see the taillights in front of me. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
all right,
no, I'm
go
talking
for it.
where we can't see anything in front of us, right? We get that, the fear of the unknown. And
Sure.
so if you're dealing with the fear of the unknown, gentlemen, it's a pretty simple deal. Go get knowns. If I have
Yeah.
unknowns, I need knowns. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but it preaches. Okay. So if I don't know something, I need to go know something. If I'm unsure of a thing, what does it take to get qualified? Go freaking figure it out. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
in the book, Get Qualified, which by the way, this is where a lot of fears are. It's stage 2. And I reveal the qualifying questions. There's 4 of them. I'll give it to you super fast. Um, what do I need to know? That's knowledge. So that's some form of education. Could be certification or a degree. I don't know. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? That's experience. What's experience necessary? What's an entry level situation that gets me on the ladder? Third question is, how much is that going to cost me? That's financial. I got to look at the financial realities. And the fourth question is, how long is it going to take? I just gave you 4 simple questions allow you to develop a plan. And for the fear of the unknown, it destroys the fear of the unknown. We get those answers.
Right.
Another
Right.
big fear of failure. We kind of talked about that one earlier. We get that. We're all just afraid of the sting. Let's go back to when we were little boys riding the bike for the first time. What were we afraid of? We were afraid of wrecking the bike and having no skin on our knees or our elbows and sticking to the sheets for 6 nights. That's what we were afraid of. Okay, fear of failure. All right. Then another big fear is,
Ken, let me say one thing about that if I can real quick, because I actually had somebody message me. I think it was actually this morning. Sometimes it all blends together, but he said he's wanting to start a podcast, but he admitted, I'm afraid. And I thought to myself, what could you possibly be afraid of? There's only going to be one person who listens to your podcast, and she already loves you.
That's the truth, man. That is
Like,
so true.
like nobody's going to listen to you on your first 5 podcasts. So just get started. And yeah, you're going to sound like a fool. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat that. You're going to sound
Right.
foolish, but nobody's going to hear it. And by
Right.
the time you do a 10th podcast, a 20th, a 100th podcast, you'll get your feet under you and people will say, he's pretty good at this. Right. Because you did it when nobody was listening.
That's it. Well, you just addressed the third major fear of peers. I call it fear of peers because it sounds good, but it involves family too. So your friend's fear that's crippling him right now is, what are other people going to think about my podcast? Are they going to listen to it? Are they going to think I suck? Are they going to think I'm delusional? That's what he's afraid of. Fear of peers. We as human beings long for community and acceptance. And so he's got fear of peers. So you got fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of peers. Those are your big fears. Doubt is the cousin of fear. Please don't confuse the two. A lot of people confuse the two. It drives me nuts because fear is, I'm afraid of this happening. Doubt is, I don't believe this can happen. You see the difference?
Sure.
Very clear distinction. I'm afraid of something bad happening. Doubt is, I don't think something good can happen.
Right.
Now
Do
they
you
work
advocate? Well, I was going to ask, do you advocate for men to address it? So, for example, when you talk about fear of peers and you're afraid of your peers or your family members thinking that you're horrible at this, when I hear that, I think, yeah, that's right. And you are going to be horrible at it. And so just admit it and deal with it. But I'm not sure if that's the approach you would take or suggest either.
No, it is. In fact, I would say embrace the suck.
Right.
There is no success without suck. You can't really spell success without suck if you drop the K. And as cheesy as that is, there is no success without suck. Period. Period. I mean, I want people I tell you the ones where I get most fascinated. And I got to interview somebody like this. I've never done it. And I need to do it. I'm obsessed with these extreme sports guys, these skateboarders and BMXers and snowboarders that are doing all this crazy twist. What did their first couple of attempts look like years ago?
Oh, man. And the pain associated with failure. Like the physical pain of failure in their realm.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen Travis Pastrana? I think is his name. Go look this dude up. He's like the most successful daredevil ever. My kids and I love watching. It's one of the few family shows you can still watch. And we love watching America's Got Talent. I'm obsessed with the journey and I love everything about it. Well, they got a new one out right now called America's Got Talent Extreme, and it's all extremists. And Travis Pastrana is one of the hosts. And the first night, Ryan, when they introduced him, he comes walking out. You know, they introduce the judges and they come walking out. The dude's legs are like,
Oh,
I mean,
I'm
he can't
sure.
even. Then he goes on to tell you how many bones. He tells Simon Cowell at one point how many bones he's broken, and it's mind blowing. So I just want to really illustrate the point you just made that. So you have to embrace the suck, is what I would say, and it's like the first time is the worst time.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, I don't have time to tell a story, but when I found out I was going to have a new version of the Ken Coleman show in Ramsey Land, which is so much bigger than the first version when I was doing it for myself,
I bet.
I got a phone call. Hey, Ken, Dave just signed a deal with Sirius XM. We're going to do a whole Ramsey channel. And the other personalities who only had podcasts, weekly podcasts, they're going to kind of figure out a way to put them on. But you're about ready to launch a show anyway. And Dave says you're ready. And he wants you to do a daily show live going into him. And then he goes, and then they said, they want you to do a caller driven show. I would love to burn the first 6 months of that show because my calls were probably 10, 11 minutes long. I was trying to meander my way through the best way to give advice. And now I can give somebody advice in 5 to 6 minutes because I've had the repetition now of 5,000 plus calls. But I want to remind everybody, I sucked. And I wish I could apologize to all of those people that called in that first 5 months, 6 months. I mean that. I'm not being melodramatic. I was terrible. I can't even listen to it now. And so, you know, it is, I'll tell you a fun little story. I'm going to tell you a fun little story. It's on the internet. I don't know who came up with it. It's brilliant. But I remind myself of this story almost daily. So it's the story of an old man. He's walking down a country road, Ryan, and he's just all by himself. And out of the peripheral of his vision, he sees something fluttering. He's on the edge of this dirt road, and there's an old fence with some bushes kind of grown into the fence. And on one of the edge of the leaves, he sees a little wiggle, and he looks and he sees it's a cocoon. And he sees it wiggling. He looks a little closer, and he sees 2 little butterfly feet just poking out the bottom of that cocoon, and they're wiggling really hard like this, and then they stop. And he's like, you and I are right now. What happened next? He's like watching. And the legs are still, they're not moving. He's like, oh, crud. Just as he begins to help, the legs wiggle again, and the process repeats itself. Happens again. They stop. He's watching. And he feels compelled. I got to help this butterfly get out. It's losing its strength. So he reaches down and he gingerly opens the cocoon, and the butterfly flops out. And then within seconds, falls to the ground and dies seconds later. And the old man in that moment realizes what he had just done. In his desire to help the butterfly escape the struggle, he killed it. Because had he let the butterfly alone in its natural struggle, you talk about the order of man, this is the order of life. He lets that butterfly alone, and eventually that butterfly breaks out of that cocoon, and this time it lives. Why? Because it was the struggle that gave it the strength to be the beautiful creature that it is. Embrace the suck, guys. It is the struggle that gives us the strength we need for the journey. And I think sometimes we try so hard to get out of the struggle. And I wish I could go back and all those times give myself a better pep talk. I wish I knew this story, because I'd go, Coleman, embrace the struggle, dude. Because it's giving you the strength that you're going to need when I give you the baton that you so long to carry. I really believe that with all my heart. I believe God allows us to struggle because it's the only way we're going to have the strength to actually do the thing that we long for. If we get it before we're ready, we die like the butterfly. So I would just tell you, in seasons of great struggle, try to be grateful for it.
The extreme of that is that sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be.
That's true too.
And so I hear what you're saying when you talk about, yeah, you're going to struggle. It's going to be a challenge. But it seems to me that a lot of people who are trying to find this purpose and develop a career that they're passionate about end up making it harder than they need to be. Are there pitfalls that you've seen people step into other than just maybe lack of consistency or lack of staying in it long enough that
Yeah.
men should avoid as they're making this pursuit?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's a couple of biggies. Let's go back to, I was talking about get clear. I was talking about talent, passion, mission early on.
Right.
You got to ask yourself, why are you struggling? I think you
Mm,
bring up a good point. It Unnecessary struggle is stupid.
right.
Let's not romanticize stupid struggle. I'm
Well, it's
talking
hard enough
about
as it is, right? So like
that's
we don't need to
right.
make it more difficult.
That's right. So we need to examine why the struggle. That's what we do to answer your question. We're going, okay, why the struggle? So we got to be able to be honest. We got to have good men around us that will speak truth in our lives. This is where
Mm,
accountability and truth tellers in our lives is huge, guys. Because if you go, oh, I'm struggling, and you got a friend goes, no, you're not. You're tentative. The reason you're struggling is because you're being so freaking timid
mm,
or whatever the situation is. So I'll give you a
sure.
couple of the struggles. So we look at the struggle. One of the big struggles is that we have high levels of passion. Remember talent, passion, mission? Let's get back
Right.
to purpose. You shouldn't struggle mightily for long periods of time if you're on purpose. So I'm going to go back and I'm a guy that's struggling. The first thing I'm going to look at if I'm coaching, I'm going to go, okay, is this high on your passion line and mission line? Yeah, but you don't have the talent to pull it off. Okay, so we need
Mm.
to adjust. That could be a
So
big
this
source of your struggle.
so this might be somebody who's perpetually grinding but not experiencing results.
That's right. You shouldn't be grinding if you're doing something you're really darn good at. So we're going to go, okay, is my heart? So this is a passion thing. Let me give you a silly example of this. Um, this is the person who comes to American Idol who loves music and they're okay at best, or maybe they're awful. And
Right,
they sing
right.
before the judges and the judges go, you suck. Or they
And it's the
go,
first time they've ever heard it, right?
and then they're just like, we watch them melt down.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason they hadn't made it to that point is because they weren't good enough. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why I go, guys, let's go back to, am I pursuing something? We started with talent. It's not enough just talent, but it starts with talent. Am I doing something that I'm actually good enough to pull off and do? I am going to suck early on, but I also knew, Ryan, that I was a good communicator and I knew that I had the chops if I was willing to put in the work. I knew that I could talk well, if you will, right?
Right,
And so
right.
that kept me going. So remember, folks, I told you a couple of suck stories, but the reality is that I was still pursuing something that I did have the talent to pull off. And so then it turned into a skill. So first we're going to look at, is it talent? Is it passion? Is it mission? Is it maybe I love the work, but the results of the work don't really kind of resound with me? And so instead of pressing through like the great entrepreneurs who are deeply passionate, I'm kind of quitting when it gets really hard. Well, the secret to entrepreneurship is passion because you
Well, I
will
can give
fail.
I can give you an example of that. My financial planning practice is a perfect example. I was fairly good at it. It was a successful
Yep.
financial planning practice. I thought what we were doing was valuable work. We're helping people with their money and their retirement and peace of mind and all of the things that a lot of what you guys do with Ramsey Solutions.
Mhm.
And I would get phone calls towards the end of my career and I'd look at my phone. I'm like, oh, because the results that I was producing, although they were positive results, were just not appealing to me. Like it just didn't charge me. And I told my buddy who ended up buying my financial planning practice, I was talking to him, a year or two later, and I said, man, I really love what I'm doing. I'm very passionate about it. And he said the same thing about his financial planning practice. And I thought, isn't that interesting? The thing that you love, I just got so tired of. And yet you're charged and you're talking about it, something I don't enjoy, the same way I talk about the thing that I enjoy. It was very enlightening for me.
That's it. That's what we're talking about. What you're doing now is on purpose for you. What he's doing is on purpose. Why? Because it allows you to do what you do best, to do work you love, to produce results that matter to you. And folks, when we figure that out, and by the way, we have an assessment called the Get Clear Career Assessment. They can get it at kencoleman.com. And in 20 minutes, Ryan, they're going to get a deep report on talent, passion, and mission. And it'll give them a purpose statement that fills out those top 3 talents, top 3 passions, and primary mission, I really would encourage guys who are feeling like they need that extra jolt of clarity, try it. And if it doesn't work for you, email me and we'll give you your money back. That's a guarantee. Tens and tens of thousands of people have taken it, and it's my life's work, because the reason I'm so passionate about it is because it's actually so stinking simple. It's just revealing. It's like me holding a mirror up to you. And let me throw in another thing on this struggle question. You know, another reason a lot of guys struggle is because they don't have the right people around them. If there was only one message I could give the men, it would be, guys, the longest relationship study in the history of the world. It's now over 75 years. They've been following people from birth to death at Harvard. And the number one conclusion, I poured over the results, the number one conclusion that I share on every stage and on the show as much as I can. They have concluded that 95% of our success or failure in any area of life, 95% of our success or failure is directly connected to the people we spend the most time with.
Interesting. Yeah.
And dudes, one of the reasons, you could be on purpose, man. You could take the assessment and go, all right, I get it. Coleman says this, and I am using what I do best to do work I love to produce results that matter to me, but I'm still struggling. And many times it's because you're in mile 6 or 7. The adoring family members at the start of the race are gone.
Yeah.
And we're on mile 6 or 7, man. And we ain't nobody we know. The amino acids are pumping. Our heart is drooping. Come on. I'm talking to somebody today. And it is in those moments when we need other dudes, man, that we can call. All right. And this isn't sissy stuff. Real men, man, can go call another real dude and go, man, I'm broken. I'm struggling. I want to quit. You know, when I trained for the half marathon, I only did it once because Dave Ramsey guilted me into it because I hate running. I think it's for people who need deep therapy. I like working
Maybe
out.
that is their therapy or something. I don't know. That's what they say anyways. I don't know about that, but
I told my wife when I was training for it, I was like, man, the great news is that I'm not as broken as I thought I was, because I don't need
for sure. That's right.
But anyway, here's the key. Here's what I learned. When I ran with a couple of my buddies that were actual runners in some practice runs, my pace was always significantly faster.
Of course.
And I remember going, man, that's it, baby. This is the power of surrounding yourself with good people who naturally push you because of the pace they're setting. And so you need to be around great pace setters who you start to feel weak and they go, come on, man, I got you. Let's go. And they come alongside of you. And you're like, oh, crap, he's 4 steps ahead of me if I don't do this. And his gravitational pull. And so I will tell you, 95% of your success or failure, not my words, Harvard's words, 75-plus-year study, not Ken Coleman's opinion. I would take inventory. If you find yourself in a constant state of struggle, I'd take inventory pretty quick on the people you spend the most time with. You need to be around people who push you. And that's that pace setter I just talked about. People who you can call that they will lift you. They got the spiritual gift of encouragement. You just can call and be very vulnerable, and they're not going to bust your chops. That first friend's going to bust your chops. All right. Tough luck. That second friend, the lifter, is somebody who's just going to listen and go, hey, man, you got this. I feel you. I understand. And then you need a person who holds you accountable on a consistent basis. Push you, lift you, hold you accountable. You need dudes like that in your life, man. And you need some other knights of the round table around you, or whatever analogy you want to use. But that to me is another major area of struggle. I think it's purpose. And then I think it's proximity. If I'm going to try to alliterate, you know, who am I in proximity to? Because there's a good sign of your success rate right there.
Well, and that, I mean, I know we're talking about your latest book, From Paycheck to Purpose, but that's the other book, right? That's the first book, which is the proximity principle. Yeah. And so, which I've read as well. I don't know if you remember this. You and I did a podcast years ago when that book came out. Do you remember that?
You know what, bro? I do not.
That's because I'm completely different than I was back then.
I was going to say, it wasn't the Order of Man, was it?
No, it was the Order of Man. You had said some things. I'm like, I don't think you rememred we did a podcast. It's just because I've gotten so much better over the past 3 years. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, listen, I need to be vulnerable and honest. But now, to be fair, that was several years ago. I've slept many times since then and done hundreds and hundreds of podcasts. But no, that's really cool. And let me say thank you for having me on that first time, because you're like, who's this guy and what's this book about? But thank you. I appreciate that.
No, man, these messages are so powerful, and I really appreciate you coming on to share them. Well, tell the guys where to connect with you. Remind them about the assessment, what is it? Get Clear Career Assessment.
Yeah, the Get Clear
and your book as well.
Yeah. So, this book, From Paycheck to Purpose, is think of it as the guide up the mountaintop. In the first 2 chapters, we do unpack Get Clear, the stage 1. So there's 7 stages. I mentioned that earlier. And I really believe that I've given people a very practical, non-motivational gibberish. Here's how you identify the mountain. Here's how you climb.
Right.
I can't guarantee the timeline, but I can guarantee you, if you walk these stages, you're going to get there. And we developed the assessment because I know a lot of people need the prompts. And so while we write about how to get clear in the book, it'll work for some. Most need something, and this is about a 15 to 20 minute assessment where I ask all the questions. All you got to do is turn your brain off, let your heart answer them. And we're going to give you a really detailed report on your top 3 talents, top 3 passions, and primary mission. You'll see where you score on all the others as well. And here's why I'm so passionate about it. It's going to give you awareness, and it's going to give you a written purpose statement that you can begin to use as a filter and a compass. A compass to go, okay, this is where I'm looking. And then as I continue to advance in life and I start to wonder, is this right? I come back to my purpose statement and I can look at me, not what Ken Coleman says about me. And so that's a bundle they can get for, I think, $40 at kencoleman.com. That's the website, kencoleman.com, to learn where you can listen or watch the show. We're on YouTube, SiriusXM, podcasts, talk radio, and tons of free resources at that website as well. And, if I could ever coach you up, guys, it's a free phone call. And I care deeply about dudes figuring out who they're meant to be, because final challenge, Ryan, you didn't ask me, but I want to share something a pastor that I admire shared with me one time, and it's really helped me. As a man, you need to be so focused on work during your day, you're doing what you love, that you truly are exhilarated and exhausted in a good way, because you've given everything on purpose during the day. Then you come home and you're helping out in the kitchen, cooking, helping out with homework, getting the kids to bed, doing all that thing. And then you better give some time to your wife, because she's got words she's got to get out. And you're going to be one eye open and head bobbing, but you better sit and listen to her. And when all that's done, there might be time for a little bit of a book or something. But you ought to be falling into bed, because a man who's not on purpose is very tempted by distraction. And we have a vital role in this society. And I will tell you that I believe, without a shadow of a doubt, the reason I wanted to be on this show specifically is because of what you're doing, Ryan. And I want people to hear, if you heard nothing else today, men, I want you to hear this, that when you are on purpose in your professional life, you've got a great shot of winning big in your personal life. Because if you're not, you're dragging that crap home with you. And so if we can get you on fire professionally, I believe it's going to make you a better husband and a better father and a better friend, a better brother, all the things. And so this is important stuff.
Absolutely. That's why I wanted to have you on. That's why I enjoy your books and our several conversations we've had. Ken, I appreciate you. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Hey, you're doing good work. Don't quit.
No way. Never.